Blackwood Falls wasn't on most modern maps of Maine. It was a ghost town that hadn't managed to die officially yet. The air here was motionless, as if frozen in transparent amber. The only thing maintaining the illusion of life in this hole was Elias Thorne's farm on the hill. But Thorne didn't grow wheat or corn. His fields were covered with strange white stones, piercing through the black soil in rows as straight as a ruler. The locals moved through the streets slowly, like sleepers in a dream. They had strangely smooth faces, devoid of the wrinkles of experience, and empty eyes that reflected neither past nor future. If you asked a waitress for directions in the local diner, she might suddenly fall silent mid-sentence, staring into space with an expression of absolute incomprehension, as if her own name had just evaporated from her head. Gabe, a journalist who came here investigating mass cases of amnesia, stopped by Thorne's fence. He turned off the engine of his old Toyota and heard it. It wasn't the rustle of the wind. It was the sound of thousands of jaws rubbing against each other. A dry, rhythmic grinding that made Gabe's gums go numb instantly. He raised his flashlight and shone it on the nearest row. His heart skipped a beat. Protruding from the scabs of dry earth were not stones. They were human incisors, canines, and molars. They sprouted from the soil like hideous white larvae, and on each of them glistened fresh morning dew that smelled of rust and raw blood. Elias Thorne appeared from the fog, as quietly as if he were part of the earth's vapors himself. He held a rusted hoe, its blade jagged and covered in dark residue. The old man looked as if he were made of dirt and roots. The deep cracks on his face were filled with soil, and instead of one eye, he had a polished white bone bead.
Beautiful, isn't it? This is the purest harvest in all of New England. Every child in town gives me the seeds. When their first milk tooth falls out, they put it under their pillow. But the tooth fairy in this country is me, lad. I take them and plant them here in this greedy earth.
Gabe shuddered. He remembered that half the adults in town couldn't remember their childhood. They forgot their parents' names, the color of their first car, the smell of their own home.
A tooth is the root of memory,
Thorne continued, stroking the earth with a dirty hand and unnaturally long fingers.
It's a tuning fork that holds the resonance of your soul. If the tooth is in the ground, then the memory belongs to the ground. It grows, filling with strength, drinking the juices of the soil, and the person becomes lighter, empty, pure. Blackwood is a city without sins, for no one remembers how they committed them. This is my mercy.
Gabe returned to the farm at night. He wasn't just a professional. He was a man who had lost everything. 6 months ago, he had woken up in a hospital, remembering no one but a red-haired girl whose name slipped away like smoke. His only clue was a ticket to Blackwood Falls in his coat pocket. The night field looked surreal. In the moonlight, the teeth glowed with a ghostly phosphoric light, like thousands of tiny gravestones. Gabe walked between the rows, trying not to step on the harvest, and it felt like the ground beneath his feet was pulsing like a giant stomach. Suddenly he heard a whisper. It didn't come from the air. It came directly from underground. Every tooth was vibrating. One whispered of a childhood fear of the dark, another of the taste of mother's pies, a third of the death rattle of an old woman left to die alone. The field was a giant archive of human pain and joy, encased in calcium. He found his patch. There was only one canine. It was bloody and twitched in the rhythm of his own heart. Gabe grabbed it with both hands.
Give her back to me.
The earth didn't intend to give up its prey without a fight. As Gabe pulled the tooth, he heard something growl deep below. It wasn't Thorne. It was something far larger. Something ancient that had slept beneath the fields, long before the first pilgrims set foot on these shores. He pulled harder, feeling bloody silt cramming under his fingernails. An image flashed in his head. A girl, laughter, golden sunlight on her face. Anna. The memory returned with such force that Gabe fell to his knees, blood spurting from his nose. But with the memory came physical pain. His own jaw suddenly felt fragile, as if made of glass, and he heard his own teeth begin to loosen in his gums.
You cannot just take what has already become part of the system.
Thorne's voice rang out directly behind him. The old man stood there, his white eye glowing in the dark like a rotten pearl.
If you want to remember, you must become part of the exchange. The earth does not tolerate debts.
Elias raised his hoe, but he didn't strike Gabe. He began to dig around him with incredible speed. He ripped up the earth, and Gabe saw the terrifying truth. The teeth on the field were not separate plants. They were all part of one giant skeleton that lay beneath the entire city. Miles of white bones, woven into an infinite, chaotic labyrinth where ribs served as tunnels and jaws as foundations.
This is our God,
Thorne whispered, falling to his knees in the mud.
the great GNAWER. He eats our past so we can live without the burden of guilt. And he is very hungry now, Gabe, because you tried to steal his dessert.
The earth beneath the farm began to split open. Massive bone plates covered in millions of human teeth began to surface. They consisted of canines, incisors, and molars, glued together by clotted blood and rust. It wasn't just murder, it was a process of grinding. The jaws began to chew everything around them. Gabe saw trees on the edge of the forest disappear into these bone millstones, turning into splinters. Elias Thorne stood with arms wide, laughing and crying at once, until one of the massive bone plates covered him, crushing him with a sound like a cracking eggshell. Gabe ran to his car without looking back. He heard the farm collapsing behind him, the sound of the grinding louder than the most powerful thunder. All of Blackwood Falls began to vibrate. The god beneath the ground was waking up, and he wanted to eat the whole city. He made it past the city limits at dawn. His face was covered in blood, and all his own teeth. They simply crumbled into white dust the moment he crossed the border of Blackwood Falls. His mouth was full of blood and enamel fragments, but he survived. He remembered Anna. He remembered how she died in that crash 6 months ago, and how he himself had been driving. He remembered his guilt. Gabe stopped the car on the highway, 10 miles from the city. A truck driver who stopped nearby looked suspiciously at the blood-covered man.
Buddy, you need a hospital fast. Your face, it's like it's caving in.
Gabe looked in the rearview mirror. His jaw was indeed vanishing. It didn't just ache, it was evaporating, leaving only soft tissue. When he returned his darkest memory, the field began to take from him the very physical ability to hold it. He tried to say something, but instead of words, A fine, sweetish white dust poured from his mouth, the pulverized memory of thousands of people. Gabe sits on the shoulder of the empty highway, looking east where the sun illuminates the Blackwood Falls Valley. The town looks peaceful, but Gabe sees how from under every house, from every crack in the asphalt, small, white, sharp sprouts are beginning to grow. The field was no longer confined to Thorne's farm. Blackwood didn't have enough milk teeth anymore. Now the great GNAWER wanted adult memories. He wanted the whole city. Gabe felt a sharp sting in his own stomach. He looked down and saw, right through the skin of his chest, directly over his heart, the first white, perfectly clean human tooth slowly and surely breaking through. The earth always completes its harvest.